This is Cheryl Harry, President Mehbubulhaq Economic Society. I welcome you all on this session arranged by Mehbubulhaq Economic Society, but it wouldn't have been possible if our speakers wouldn't be here today. It's really an honor and it's really a pleasure that they have given their important time to us and they have accepted our invitation. We're really very glad. So, COVID has made it very impossible and created barriers that we can't interact physically. But I believe every situation has a positive and bright side. And today we are able to have these influential people with us all together. And today we will get to know about the important part of our budget, that is youth, and how important youth plays a role and how important our country needs youth. So without speaking more, I thank you again and thank you everyone for joining this session, and I hand over this event now to Dr. Saima, Advisor, Mehbubulhaq Economic Society. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Welcome to all of you for joining us here at this event today. Let me take this opportunity first to introduce my guest in this webinar. We are very thankful to everyone, Dr. Vaqar, who is the Joint Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Ms. Sana, who has been an advisor to the who is UK-based advisor to in the affairs of youth. And then I would like to thank Mr. Ali, who has joined as the young entrepreneur at this moment. We all are very familiar with Dr. Vaqar Ahmed, who has been here on many occasions previously from the Department of Economics through the platform of MHES. He's a very well-known personality at this moment when discussing the economic affairs in the perspective of Pakistan's economy. He has a very rich, you can say, profile. If you listen about his achievements, I think my students and the young youth of this time will be very much impressed at how the achievements can be taken, or you can say gained at this young age of level. He has served UNDP as an advisor. He has taken many assignments with Asian Development Bank, World Bank Group, and Ministries of Finance, Planning and Commerce in Pakistan. He's also the Honorary Research Fellow at Partnership for Economic Policy, Canada. He has served as a visiting faculty member and researcher in different international institutes, including the University of Laval in Canada. And he was recipient of 2015 Young Leader Fellowship Award by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Welcome, Dr. Vaqar, today on this webinar. Then I would like to introduce Ms. Sana. She's a UK's Punjab Development Advisor, and Sana strategically advises on and is the senior liaison for all UK development programs in the province. She works closely with the government of Punjab to achieve shared goals on health, education, governance, climate, and other development priorities. She has held several post in British High Commission prior to her current role. She was recently the lead advisor of FCDO's subnational governance program. Before that, she was seconded to the UNRCO to advise on the largest programs for the newly merged districts, ex-FATA. She has also served as the deputy and acting head of Conflict, Security and Stability Fund. Welcome, Ms. Sana, today for the webinar. We were also having a Syed Javed Hassan today as one of the guests, but due to his sudden commitment at some important office. He could not join us today. He was also having his expertise in the youth affairs. He's currently chairman of NAVTEC, and we were supposed to have some advices or guidance from him on the skills or vocational side of the trainings of the youth. Then lastly, we have in our panel, Mr. Ali, who is the one who will give us or tell us about his success story as a young entrepreneur. He is the one who has been serving many years in oil and gas industry, and then he served also as 13 years for retail business, representing himself as the leading brand from the US, UK, and Europe. So this is our this is the brief introduction of our panel today. And the topic is very interesting. As you all know that we have come across about the new budget, which is a very important task or assignment on the behalf of the government. And all try to see that who is going to be benefited out of those initiatives the government takes in the new term, and how their challenges which the masses are facing, these are going to be tackled with the help of suitable solutions. As you all know, Pakistan is going through a demographic transition. We are having a youth bulge, and it is for the first time that we have ever this huge population of young population of 64%, which is below the age of 30. And it is forecasted that it will prolong or it will continue to increase till 2050. This is from the report, which is UNDP report 2017, where this is quoted. And definitely we are all the policymakers especially are focusing that how to absorb this youth bulge for upcoming years. So keeping this important aspect of our economy, this society has taken this opportunity that how to focus and how to bring into focus, or how to highlight the challenges youth is actually facing in practical life. This can be from the university level side of people who are currently completing their degrees. This can be from those that side of the coin, those who are not having formal education, but they are just into skills and training programs, completing their diplomas. And if they complete their diplomas, then how these people will be absorbed through different initiatives. As we see that the government is giving us various programs in the form of Ehsas program, in the form of Kamyab Naujawan program. So how these are going to actually help our youth in their practical life for their livelihoods. So this is the brief scenario of today's webinar. Now handing over to Dr. Vaqar for shedding light on all these points or the topic which has been thrown for discussion, so that we can have a better knowledge or insightful, conclusion on all these sort of steps, initiatives the government has taken, and how these can actually help us. Over to Dr. Vaqar.
Thank you, Dr. Saiba. I really appreciate your introduction as well as the initiative. I think it's very timely. I must also appreciate the initiative by Mehbubulhaq Society. Thank you for getting all of us around the virtual table for a post-budget meeting. It's not very usual to have such discussions, but I'm glad that this culture is setting in gradually. And with your help, academia, policy researchers, think tanks, all of them are taking interest in the planning and budgeting process in the country. So just wanted to thank you really deeply to start with. And of course, while you have been kind to invite us, Dr. Saima, I must also thank Professor Babar Aziz Saab as well as the team at Mehbubulhaq Society, including Ms. Cheryl Harry, for her very diligent preparation and coordination with the speakers. As you rightly pointed out, that the way we had tried to design the panel today was that we had thought that Javed Hassan Saab would actually open from the government side, and given that he's chairman NAVTEC, and of course he leads the planning and budgeting when it comes to skills building or Kamyab Jawan program and other related programs within the government. But as of course is the case with the most policymakers, they are pressed with time, and they have a lot of demands on them, and I think we're going to miss him. He sends his regrets. He indeed wanted to be here, but it's just that the budget debate has just started in the parliament yesterday, day before yesterday, and of course he will be responsible to defend his budget line along with the education minister. And then we had thought that from the private sector, Mr. Muhammad Ali Sahab will represent, and we'll get a view from how, of course, private sector is seeing this budget. But of course, given Muhammad Ali Sahab's background in youth engagement as somebody who trains youth leaders throughout the country and abroad as well, we thought that he could touch upon the various priorities in the budget and whether this is what the youth in the country requires, or there's something more that needs to be done, and what is the youth asking for. Of course, the voice of the youth was also important, which I'm sure that he will bring in today's meeting. And then we had thought that from the development partner side, given their large role, of course, technical, financial, intellectual role in the planning and budgeting process, we had thought that Ms. Sana Zia would explain to us, and I'm glad that she was able to join today's meeting. So, of course, Dr. Sama, I also join you in thanking both the other two panelists in joining us here. Now, I'd initially planned to come at the very last, but with Javed Saab not being here, I thought that I could come in, and I had a chat with him last evening that what would be a balanced picture that we should present over here, so that we also present the government's view as well as the view from the independent side as well. So if you I hope you can see my slides. I just have very brief slides taking lead from what both of us had discussed. So if our colleagues can confirm if my slides can be seen here.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So just very quickly, because this is a post-budget meeting, so just to put some numbers over here, I think we have seen decent recovery this year, and the economic growth rate, or as we call it, the growth rate of the real GDP, has grown by almost 4%. And of course, this is a recognizable jump, given that the same number was minus 0.5% in the previous year. And we are glad to note that all subsectors have shown some recovery. So agriculture growing by 2.8%, industry at 3.6%, and services at 4.4%. Given the facilitation provided to small businesses, large businesses by the central bank, as well as the fiscal package which was announced, there has been a growth in the fixed investment as well, or gross fixed capital formation as we call it, and the fixed investment has grown by 14%. But we do note that some large sectors are still facing challenges, and cotton declined by minus 16, and mining by minus 6.4, electricity and gas generation and distribution by -23. We see some services sector under stress as well, including transport sector, which will remain a concern for the government. In case of external flows, we are seeing a strong upward trend in exports and remittances as Pakistani buyer markets abroad open up, and Pakistani diaspora has been taking good advantage of Russian digital account and other facilitations, and we have seen the remittances pick up. However, we are concerned that the direct investment is seen shrinking here, and FDI is something which is very dear to us. Even within the CPEC portfolio, I think we need to pay some attention so that longer term FDI comes back. On the fiscal side, we note that despite of COVID-19, FBR was able to cross 4 trillion rupees of revenue collection mark, which is very encouraging. However, the expenditure side pressures on the government remain due to the need to sustain higher levels of social protection. Some accrued expenditures are there, including circular debt, as well as the losses of state-owned enterprises. I think both of them will continue to remain a concern for the PTI government for the next remaining period as well. Circular debt currently stands around 2.7 trillion rupees, and then you have SOE, state-owned enterprise losses, which are around 1.5 trillion rupees. So that's a huge gap which one needs to cover. Now, moving on, I thought that I could just, in the brief time that I have, touch upon 5 big messages on youth and skills development. I'm not a technical person in youth development, and I leave that to my colleagues who are more experienced and more qualified to talk on projects and programs. So as strictly looking at it from public finance point of view, the first big message is that there remains a need to create fiscal space for investment in youth capabilities. So it's not the traditional brick and mortar kind of projects that are required. It's not the traditional capacity building that is required. Instead of youth capacities, we are using here very carefully, we are using here the term youth capabilities. And we can discuss later what's the difference here, but this is where fiscal space needs to be created. Second is that our budgets for youth are not that bad. We have allocation for youth and skills. But the efficiency in spending is something which is a key concern. So according to a bit dated study by Dr. Hafiz Pasha, uh, every 100 rupee which is being spent, 39 rupees are not reaching the beneficiary, and that's due to the efficiency in the public spending, which needs to be improved. The third big message is that when it comes to budgeting for youth, there are some initiatives in the neighborhood, in the region, and even beyond the region. And I think we need to learn from the peers. I can explain some of the more known lessons, but I think given that we have the esteemed faculty members from Government College Lahore and young researchers in the meeting as well, they would perhaps like to pick up this point for their further research and what we can learn from the peer economies. The fourth big message is the duplication across federation budgets. And we feel that if, for example, uh, that the federal government already has a program, let's say, for raising polytechnics, the government of Balochistan or government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa need not spend their budgets, even if these are look good projects, even if these are politically motivated projects. You will do good with taxpayers' money if this duplication is avoided. And then finally, there are always risks to budgeting for youth, and it's very easy to put a cut on budgets allocated for youth when, for example, any other emergency comes about, which is okay. But of course, there are ways to reduce those risks or mitigate those risks, which one would like to discuss. Uh, Moving on, this is a very quick snapshot of the federal budget. And while, of course, there are a lot of numbers over here, let me pick up on three main points. One is that if you look at the federal government's net revenue receipts, and if one looks at the federal government's total expenditure, you are left with a deficit which is more than 3 trillion rupees. And certainly this is one of the highest deficits in history, and requires a lot of, it certainly increases the borrowing requirement of the government, as you can see here. Uh, but let's look at the expenditure side of this budget, where I think we would be interested in. And when one talks about the first big message that I showed, which is how to create fiscal space for youth, uh, let's try to find out if federal government has some space for that. So you have current expenditures to the tune of around 7.5 trillion, out of which uh, almost half of this is debt servicing. And then, of course, you have running of public expenditures, public salaries, defense expenditures, law and order, pensions, etc. And of course, disaster related expenditures, including the expenditure on COVID. Now, after spending this much amount, unfortunately, the federal government is not even left with uh, it's not even left with 1 trillion out of the total 8.4 trillion kitty which it has. So the total development budget that you're seeing out of the federal PSDP is $900 billion. And of course, from $900 billion, you would expect the federal government to take ownership or to uh, uh, or probably I, I, I think maybe somebody's mic is not on mute, and there's some distortion here. Um, so as I was saying, that federal PSTP is in federal PSTP we are left with 900 billion, out of which the highest amount goes to items such as water resource development, National Highways Authority, and then the energy sector. And then, of course, whatever is left would be given to programs which we will just see in a while, which may be relevant over here. But the point to make is that in the federal budget, we cannot expect much. And after the 18th Amendment, the expectation is more from the provinces to plan and budget for youth and their capacity building, and of course, to invest in their capabilities. And because Punjab's budget was presented day before yesterday, so here we have a snapshot from the ADP, the Annual Development Program for the Government of Punjab. Now, as you have seen, as you can see over here, there are numerous responsibilities now which are not on the federal books. And this is something that you would get to see only in the provincial budget. So if sizable budget line has to be seen on youth as well as uh, social sector development, you would end up seeing in the development budget. So now, of course, for a province like Punjab, the annual development budget is almost as large as the federal government actually spent out of its PSDP this year. So 560 billion rupees is almost the same amount of PSDP which the federal government had spent this year. So the point that I'm making is that now provinces have a lot of scope in their budgets if they plan well, if they budget well for youth, and they have probably greater fiscal space to invest over here. Now, putting together the allocation for youth capabilities, and I'm sure that the Sindh budget has been uploaded last evening as well. We'll get to see Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan budgets as well this week. But now, because we have the federal government budget and Punjab budget, you can see four big ticket items over here which have been planned for youth. One, as Dr. Simon was saying, the Kamyab Jawan program has an allocation of 5 billion. And then, of course, there is a discretionary expenditure available for the Prime Minister, which is with regards to Youth Business Loan Scheme. This was part of the COVID Emergency Fund. We have mentioned this as a line item, but there isn't any allocation this year. In case of Punjab budget, you have two big line items. One is the Punjab Skills Development Authority, which has been established, which is being strengthened, and it has a decent budget, I'd say around 108 billion rupees, which they have to spend. And then you have the Sports and Youth Affairs Department budget, which is much larger, around 1,060 billion rupees, which government of Punjab has to spend. Now, in terms of money, this means that we are not constrained. We have the money for youth. Let's now talk about the quality of this investment, the quality of the budget. Where will this money be spent? So if you go deeper into the Sports and Youth Affairs Department of Government of Punjab, you are looking at the allocation being spent for development of sports arena, construction of hostel, construction of 30 cricket grounds, construction of 14 hockey grounds, 3 football grounds, multi-purpose sports ground, etc. Um, and of course, you have swimming pools, you have green sports facilities, etc. Right? Is there any other area or department in the government of Punjab's budget where one can find out? Yes, you have two other departments where you can see women development. And in this department, of course, there's a focus on gender responsive budgeting. And you have budgeted things like purchase of land for establishment of women development complex, women working hostels, daycare facilities, etc. And then, of course, at a third level, if you go and read the budget lines, you also find budget for youth and skills under the Industrial and Skills Development Department, where you have trainings provided through TEVTA, Pakistan Skills Development Fund, PVTC. There is a Punjab Rozgar scheme, and of course, there's establishment of new industrial estates and skills development program. Now, as a student of economics, I think what you and I should be talking about is where to put our money. And this is where citizens' vote, taxpayers' money, and politicians' vision come in. Do you want to spend this sizable amounts of money under the three departments in, let's say, hardware or the software? Do you want to build more brick and mortar? Do you want to build more buildings for youth? Do you want to give more software to the youths? Things like, for example, skills, investing in their soft skills, for example, investing in their capabilities. And then, of course, do you want, how much do you want to give a gender lens, which should be a priority? How much within this budget do you want to give to youth from the impoverished areas, for example? So as an independent analyst, I'm not saying that the buildings which are being built are not needed, or the trainings which are being given should not be given. I'm just suggesting that this is what we need to analyze deeply. The projects are the political economy. And when you look deeply into the projects, the type of projects, the quality of project in which your taxpayers' money will go, that defines the vision of the government. And that is why budgets need to be studied very carefully, going deeper than the ballpark figures. I quickly want to turn to where we may be missing, for example, when I talk about the quality of budget for youth. I think we have a lot to learn from the peers, for example. in each of the three departments which I have mentioned, or even the federal government, when I discuss with, for example, colleagues in Kamyab Jawan program or NAVTech for that matter, they are they're very cognizant of the fact that yes, we need to have more evidence-driven budgets. For example, uh, amid COVID and the current and future waves of COVID, you need real-time data on the youth who have lost their wage employment, the youth who have lost their self-employment. Where are these youth by sector, by region, by gender? Now, you're not receiving this data in real time, and due to which you cannot have evidence-driven budgets for this youth. So that's the first thing that we learned from regional peers, countries, for example, such as Malaysia, Philippines, Sri Lanka. They have really shown the way during COVID in putting in place some evidence-driven budgets here. And then, of course, you have the role for MEAL, and MEAL is monitoring and evaluation and accountability and learning. So basically, whichever department implements youth budgets needs to have inbuilt organizational accountability and learning. We don't, if we have these systems in place which we learn from peer economies, then we don't need an accountability framework which is so expanded, including FIAs and NABs and other departments. If you have good internal organizational accountability and learning, it can help monitoring and evaluation, something which can then inform next year's budgets. And you have that learning feedback, or the learning loops as we call, which help improve the budgets for youth every passing year. Uh, so I just thought that these 3 points were very important. And now I could come back to my 5 big messages where we started from. And I just have one more slide to go. And as I said that, yes, we keep on talking about investing more in education, investing more in youth, and we will continue to do that. But the second point is also important, which is that whatever budget we have, we may not be spending it too efficiently. So we also have to talk about that as well. And none of the federating units were even able to fully spend their COVID emergency funds in 2020. And COVID emergency funds were fully disbursed, they could still not be absorbed, which means that our public investment project cycle, program cycle, suffers from certain inefficiencies, which we need to correct. And then, of course, I think the last point in which I hadn't talked about earlier, which is risks to planning and budgeting for youth. So most of the schemes which you have seen under various departments in the slides which I have shown you, unfortunately, they are not part of a strategic plan. So you just probably would end up seeing those schemes probably in the last month or month and a half of budget preparation process, when budget call circulars go out to the departments, and suddenly you start seeing new schemes in the name of youth, in the name of skills development. And my suggestion would be that planning departments also need to be strengthened. The direction, the longer term direction of youth, or as Dr. Saima was saying, how to harness the demographic dividend, that longer term thinking has to come from the planning departments. And if you have that planned thinking, then the budgets have to respond to those plans. Currently, we see that planning departments and finance departments are working I mean, I shouldn't be using the term silos, but in some provinces, that is almost the case, which is a risk for value for money that you put in the youth budgets. My concluding thoughts are, the first one is for all of us, all of you, which is that we need to collectively think how academia, think tanks, policy researchers can help. And in today's sitting, I would like to be educated. I would like to discuss with you. I think ideas should come from your side as well. And of course, we are here to engage with you. Second is budgets and social accountabilities. I invite our colleagues from academia today to look at the literature from social accountability and see that how we can use the demand side accountability tools for better budgets going forward. We remember that our organization was part of an initiative called Alif Elan, in which we used to show MPA-wise or MNA-wise constituency budgets and how much an MPA or MNA was able to win for their constituencies when it came to education budgets, and how much was actually spent at the year end, so that citizens could hold their MNAs, MPAs, or even local level politicians or administrators accountable for education in districts. And these are that's just one social accountability tool, but I invite you to look at the broader social accountability literature. And there are a lot of NGOs, very experienced NGOs in Pakistan who are doing good work in this domain. Third is the literature around open budgets. Pakistan has still not signed the Convention on Open Budgets, but still we are moving towards that direction with help from some good programs, including SNG and of course, own initiatives of the government as well. And I think one of the good things which open budgets would do is to help think that whether our budgets are aligned with our national or international development goals or not. Is the budget aligned with sustainable development goals, for example, SDGs? Is the budget giving priority to prioritized SDGs? So for example, we have 3 prioritized SDGs at the federal level. We have 4 at Punjab level, 3 at Balochistan level. Are the budgets responding to those SDGs? Will this budget help in bringing the SDGs back on track in a post-pandemic environment? So that's my third concluding thought. And then finally, I think we also need to really look into the budget tracking tools which are out there. And this is where IT and ICT tools can help. And they really help you to see how the government will spend that 1 rupee that you have paid in the taxes. How much of that 1 rupee of your tax will go to the defense, how much to debt servicing, how much to law and order, to public services, but then how much to youth and skills development, for example. And that's where the story should begin from. So Dr. Saima, thank you very much. I just stop over here and I look forward to the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vaqar, for a very detailed explanation of each and every aspect of budget. Importantly, I must say that your last slide is very informative. And the second last point, especially that whether the budget has compatibility with the sustainable development goals. This is a very important question actually, because these are the prioritized goals, and if those are not those are not being taken care while making such decisions, then it means such activities are of no use, and we are ultimately having no outcome at broader level. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaqar. Now I would like to invite Ms. Sana for giving her input related to the youth side of the budget, and how this segment of the society can be taken care with the help of such initiatives by the government. Yes, Ms. Sana. And how your organization can be helpful in terms of aid or in terms of assistance to this segment of the society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saima, and thank you once again for the GCU team for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to engage with you, and on a lighter note, always helpful to share a panel with Dr. Vaqar, because I think he sets out the context very well and makes life easier for other panelists to sort of drill down on specific questions and help. So thanks again for having me. So I thought what I'll do is perhaps start off with a few quick remarks on the Punjab budget in particular, and also where I see opportunities and challenges from the point of view of development partners. And I think as Dr. Vaqar, and then I wanted to sort of maybe close off with, just like Dr. Vaqar did, with maybe 3 takeaways that I had, particularly for youth, in terms of, we've talked a lot about what the government can and cannot do and what they should be doing. But with this wider awareness of what they do, where their gaps lie, what other stakeholders are doing, what is it the youth can do to optimize their options at the point that they are in their academic journey. So starting off with a bit of a reflection on the Punjab budget, which Dr. Vaqar has already very nicely covered. And as you mentioned, the funds are being allocated at federal level as well as provincial level. And they're being allocated both for infrastructure development and as well as on skill development. And I think the trend overall is that allocations, we can debate whether the quality is up to the mark and where the gaps lie. But in terms of allocations, they're by and large growing, which is a good sign. And this comes when it comes to university students like with GCU, a lot of this investment gets reflected through higher education allocations. And those who are getting skill development through a number of other initiatives that Dr. Vaqar was talking about. And then there is a third leg, which is around provision of soft loans that the government has been doing. And this also is growing over time. And like I said, there can be debate and there's literature out there on the quality of, say, for example, all these instruments and how effective they are or they're not. And that's also, by the way, linking it back to what the development sector does. These kind of assessments are often, if not always, done in partnership with development partners, which is one of the roles they end up playing, which is enhancing the analytical framework. So we often talk about that the skill development programs have gaps, etc. But I think what I wanted to, for example, also highlight as a positive development is that, for instance, on Hunarmand Jawan program, which would otherwise typically be offering more traditional skill building, the version that government is running right now tries to train 150,000 youth every year. And over time, they've started allocating half of this to train youth on what is needed today. Say, for example, on skills like high-tech solutions, artificial intelligence, robotics, and advanced electronics. So these are some good signs which we should be encouraging as well. In terms of where I see opportunities, I think first, I think the good, if I refer back to evidence, the 15 million by and large US dollar that we get in remittances from abroad, by and large come from those who have gone through skill development programs and then moved abroad. So the fact that these skill development programs add value, I think we should also acknowledge that they do. Yes, it has gaps, and as I was mentioning earlier, UNICEF, USAID, FCDO, formerly known as DFID, that I represent, they do a lot of studies to come up with, how much do they add to your productivity. So the most recent that I could find was the study that UNICEF did on Generation Unlimited, targeting youth, and they felt that the productivity gains through our training programs here, skill development programs here, particularly those run by the government, increase productivity by 7% in terms of their worker productivity, which can be linked back to the skill development program, which is kind of low compared to the regional threshold or levels that regional other countries in the region are being able to achieve. But there is a consistent improvement on these trends, which I think is promising. Challenges are well known, and as I alluded to earlier, one of the biggest criticism often on how government allocates funds or public investment is that it's largely focused on infrastructure, which Dr. Vaqar also alluded to. And there are many reasons for it, including that it's easier to showcase their political gains, etc. as well. They're easier to do as well. So as Dr. Bhatt was talking about budget expenditure, and that more often than not, we get allocations and we don't manage to implement them. And it's much quicker to implement and deliver on a building than it is to set up an institution, which requires complex procurements and requires creating posts, which takes more time. So there are many incentives why government ends up going for infrastructure projects, and that's one common challenge that it's often quoted, that balance between infrastructure and the soft side, the skill development side, is not quite right. It's improving, but that's always been a bit of a challenge. And the other challenge, the more commonly known or discussed challenge, is the quality of skill building, which we also alluded to earlier. And it's the second point that I'm mentioning where the development partners often come in. And I'm not just talking about the development partner that I represent, but more broadly, when it comes to skill development, when it comes to youth, a big proportion of their investments and their programs are focused on the latter, on developing soft skills, technical skills, improving their quality. And this is driven from the fact that whenever donor programs are set up or development projects are set up, they basically rely on evidence to figure out where the gaps lie, and what is it that the government is not being able to do, and then try and support them on those gaps. So this is primarily where a lot of development assistance or development projects that end up focusing. So I wouldn't go into the specifics, more specifics on the budget beyond this. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I thought that it might be useful to leave a couple of sort of reflections for the youth also that are listening to the conversation today. Because having sort of gone through a discussion about what the government is doing, where the gaps are, and also sort of, as I alluded to earlier, knowing that those gaps, even if not fully filled, there are opportunities out there through projects or through programs that development sector ends up supporting, that they heavily focus on the skill development side. So what is it that the youth can do to try and take an advantage of these opportunities from their perspective? And I think I wanted to sort of leave with three messages. The overarching theme that cross-cuts these three suggestions or recommendations is the fact that the youth would also have to be vigilant and watch out and be proactive to identify opportunities that they need to operate in the world that we operate in today. So I'll start off by budget, because that's the theme. So it's important that the youth engages with the budget making process in a practical manner. And given that we are a country of youth, with a youth bulge, to use that voice effectively or in an evidence-driven manner through their electoral choices as well, simply put, through who they vote for. In terms of the budget making process, I think one thing that I don't know how many of you are aware of, maybe GCU was part of that process, but Punjab government organized a series of pre-budget consultations this year, and they reached out to different segments of the society to hear their views, and they also had a dedicated discussion with youth as part of this series. And I do remember sort of talking into that session, and there were interesting and useful discussions and recommendations being made. Now that's one aspect. So it happened for the first time, from what I understand, in like a structured manner. But I've been told that this will now become a regular feature. So it will be useful for universities and for youth to engage with the budget making process, not just at this stage when budgets are being made, but also at other stages of budget making process, on expenditure reviews, as Dr. Vaqar was referring to. And then think about issues that they feel more passionately about. It could be things like skill development that we're talking about today. It could be global issues like climate change, which are going to affect them more than they will affect us. But then research, things, the fact that we live in a digital world now, it's important that what we lend our voice to is evidence driven. So there is a lot that we can sort of now do through digital platforms to be more informed than perhaps the previous generation could. So I think my first suggestion would be for the youth to engage with the process when it comes to government. When we're talking about what the government is doing, engage with it at different stages of the budget making process. Research, even if, let's say, you don't get a lot of access through other sources, you have access to digital sort of platforms, understand what's happening in the region. Ask yourself what issues you're passionate about, and maybe perhaps focus on those. But that would be my sort of first suggestion. And I think, as I think Dr. Saima also alluded to, we have a youth bulge, and I think if we use our voice nicely, it can carry a lot of weight. At the moment, I feel that we're doing it in pockets, but it's not as organized as it could be, which could be helpful. This is also a tool that of social accountability that Dr. Vaqar was also talking about in his remarks. The second sort of suggestion or takeaway for youth would be that when it comes to skill development, Yes, we learned that government has some programs running, but we also know that there are some gaps and weaknesses there. So again, there are a number of soft side programs that development sector runs. And after this session, I'm happy to send a brief list to Shiril as well. Reach out to them, try and join those trainings, try and come out to join sort of community building exercises, polish your soft skills. And that, I think, in today's time and age is very, very important. And that is a skill set. Again, I'll refer back to the most recent study that I read on the UNICEF, through the UNICEF platform. And then this does flag and point out that the soft skills, especially around leadership and communication skills and being able to articulate what you want to say effectively, take people along. These are the kind of skills that graduates of skill development programs here often are a bit weak in. So if government is not being able to offer through its own channels, watch out, be proactive, look for other opportunities that exist. British Council runs a number of programs. So does USAID, so does FCDO. So join them. So if there is a gap, be vigilant, try to see what you can do to fill it. Mentoring opportunities, there are platforms that exist that can really be effective. Part-time jobs, I did it back in my time when nobody else used to do it, because it's often associated with you have to be poor to be wanting to do a job, but it adds a lot to your skill sets. All these kind of things, I think, go a long way in polishing the soft side, which are also very important alongside the technical skill set. And the last message that I would want to leave my young listeners who are in university at the moment is that when you're graduating, don't limit yourself to jobs or government jobs. It will be useful to keep in mind that 90% of the jobs in Pakistan, for example, are created by the private sector. And I also came across another interesting study which said that freelance earning for Pakistan is increasing significantly. So for the age group 25 to 34, this is where 57% of Pakistan's freelance income or earning is coming from, and 20% for the age group 18 to 24. So do consider broader set of options where you want to engage with looking ahead, and not just limit to what options that the budget is offering you or what opportunities exist. And another point to flag here is that when we look at the budget and we say entrepreneurship, the answer we get are soft loans. But for you to be able to be a successful entrepreneur, it needs a lot more than that, which includes a lot of things that we talked about on the soft side. So I think that, again, is an option that I graduated 14 years ago, and back in the day and now I see a huge shift in interest in entrepreneurship as well. And when I say that, then there is a traditional form of entrepreneurship that we are more used to, but also the startup culture. In Pakistan, we started gaining a massive traction since 2012. And at the moment, there are more than 720 startups across Pakistan. And Punjab, where I'm speaking to students from Punjab, or who are going to university in Punjab at the very least, that Punjab does take a lead when it comes to entrepreneurship, and especially startup culture. Plan 9, Plan X, engage with them. See what options they offer. Every other day, we are hearing news of seed funding that startups are being able to generate from Pakistan. So in terms of what you can do with the skill that you acquire, also, let's not limit traditional options and look at alternatives, especially in line with where we are globally, and not just limit to what we can get from the government. I hope those are helpful. I tried, I had a lot of figures around budget, which I didn't want to go into because I thought Dr. Vaqar had very nicely covered all those points already. I was hoping to draw a better connection between what the government can do, is doing, or trying to do with what other options exist out there, and what the youth can do to try and connect the two to have better options for themselves as they look ahead. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. It was really very motivating, no doubt, for our participants. And your focus on soft skill is truly acknowledged everywhere. now both at national level and international level at audit. But the thing is, there is always a reluctance from our society on these kind of things as well. If we talk about demographic transition, I think we should also acknowledge or admit this thing that we should also transform ourselves as well. From the traditional ways to the modern or more sophisticated ways of learning, education, and trainings, to get into more, development side, or to be a part of this kind of activity of economic growth and economic development. Very nicely you have touched this topic. I think now I shall move towards Muhammad Ali, who would like to share his experience with us, so that how he acquired all such kind of experiences and trainings through trainings or through his own motivation, that how to be a part of such programs or youth leadership. Please, Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Saima. Thank you very much, the Member of Society, GCU, and Dr. Vaqar, Sana Zia. Thank you for all your inputs. Am I audible?
Yes, Ali.
Great. Sabse pehle to Saima ji, thank you once again for putting me in the youth bracket, which I wish I still was. Almost reaching the age of 50, I consider myself youth at heart still, as always. But the number doesn't depict that anymore. Secondly, Dr. Vaqar has very, very nicely, started, and Sana very rightly put it. He has very nicely set the storyboard, and what Sana did was just painted on that storyboard. And I'm going to take it a little bit further on this one by discussing not what the budgets are doing, but discussing a few stories of my life and a few things that I have come across. Back in September 2000, in fact, you know what, before I start my stories, I would like to give a couple of statements here. Entrepreneurship today is being propagated, taught, and talked by employees, not entrepreneurs. And if you see that, you will understand what I mean. Whether it is in academia, teachers, whether it is people who are coming and speaking about it, whether they are somewhere employed by somebody, either government or private sector, they have never tasted it. I have been in both shoes. I started my career with Schlumberger. I'm a mechanical engineer originally. So back in 1996, I started my career with Schlumberger, and I was, mashallah, drawing. My startup salary was around $10,000. So I started with the best of the best at the time. Then moved to business or entrepreneurship, and have been a serial entrepreneur since then. Have lost $8 million at one time, and was on the ground, did not even have money to buy the next meal for my family. And alhamdulillah, stood back from there. Lost another, they say a good entrepreneur loses three times bankrupt. So I've done my third bankruptcy. Then youth is being discussed with people like, my age set, and their youth policies are being made by those who are not youth themselves. So these are the two things I wanted to start with. And going back to September 2000, I started sitting. I lived 21 years in Dubai. I started sitting in Pakistani masjid in the last seat. I used to sit there in the last row, and started helping people finding jobs in the Middle East. Alhamdulillah, I did that for about 18 years. Wrote a few books on that as well. And Allah was kind with me that I was able to help around 40,000 plus Pakistanis in getting jobs in the Middle East. And these are the ones which I could register. The ones I couldn't, I don't have any record. Now, while I was doing that, it's not to boost myself, but while I was doing that, I wanted to make 2 points here. Number one is that let's start walking rather than talking. I started the walk. And second thing is, while I was doing it, students would come to me, or guys who would, fresh people, even the senior ones, they would come to me and they would sit that they could not even make their own CVs. And this is a dilemma we are facing even today. We are in with all due respect, in all universities and schools and colleges who have those student affairs sections, they are being told to go to Microsoft and pick up a Word and pick up a format and make their own CV. We cannot even represent our own selves today. We have not been able to gather that skill, that one skill of saying, who am I? For that also, we are looking at somebody else, some Microsoft to provide us that software and that tool. Uh, there's another point which I mentioned, which I wanted to mention here, was that not only that they are not able to present themselves just to CV thing, but there's another thing is that I remember a story of a guy. He was a chartered accountant. Uh, I produced him to Schlumberger where I was working for a job interview, and the guy was sitting in an interview. The lady asked him a certain question about his expected salary, and he flared up and he shouted at her and he said, "How dare you offer me this low salary? You know I'm a CA from Pakistan. What do you think I am?" Now, guess what did she think about what he was? Is what probably is right, but you don't throw yourself like so thin in the ground. And the reason I always quote this story is that we as a nation need to understand what is our direction. I was looking at the budget today, yesterday. Dr. Vaqar, thank you very much for sharing that file with me as well. Uh, the allocations are very good. Universities, sports complexes, I don't know, libraries, schools, excellent. But where is the direction? What is the objective? What is that we really want to achieve out of it? I couldn't see that. It's a number scoring game that I saw that last year it was this allocation, last government did this allocation, and every government probably does the same. That it's a point scoring system. It is not meant. What I am reading right through is not meant. I mean, your Kamyab Jawans, your skill developments. I've been through all of them, and when I go and ask them that what are you doing to uplift the most important capital of the world, the biggest capital Pakistan has today, our youth. What are we doing? And Dr. Vaqar very rightly pointed out that youth capabilities, spot on. What are we doing to develop those capabilities? Giving them, trainings on AI and much needed, very much needed. In opening incubation centers, very important. We must open even more. I have given talks in various incubation centers, and I want to ask, and this is the question I've asked everybody: where are your success stories? Why these incubation centers are not able to produce Microsofts and Apples and Googles? Why? Probably 1%, 2%, or let's say be 5%. Yes, and then we talk about those 5%. We do not learn from the 95% that failed. What was the reason why they failed? Failure is not a crime, but not learning from failure is a crime to me. So these people, they lack, where I'm heading to is, they all lack one thing, and that is the internal capacity and capability. I ask this question to everybody. When you have 3 kids to feed and their schooling and everything, and you lose everything that you have, $8 million is not a small amount in any currency. You are on the road. What would happen to you the first time? That is important. Alhamdulillah, summa alhamdulillah. I didn't have a heart attack. I slept that night peacefully, and in the morning woke up and decided I'm going to start my life over again, all over again, and that's what I did. How many of us have learned and gained? This is, if you don't have this inherent in you, these are the skills that can be learned. Because our youth will face failures, our youth will face downtimes, our youth will face stumbling blocks. Where are we teaching them from school level? These are the skills that have to be inculcated from school levels. I do teachers training for many schools. When I was teaching in Punjab University criminal psychology, the MSc students, I was really, really surprised. The syllabus that I was given to teach by the university was, I don't know, Stone Age syllabus, and the style expected was the same Stone Age teaching style. And I refused. I said, sorry, I'll have my own, I'll take your guidelines, I'll use this spot, but I'll teach my way and I'll teach my syllabus. And what happened after this first semester was, is something people can watch on my, on my social media, and they will see what my students have to say about me. So, and what the department has to say about me. Now, where are we taking, where are we learning those skills from? Who are we inculcating these skills in? Uh, we always talk about neighbors and peers investing in these skills. I always ask one question, and that is another question I want to let this today's audience think about. How long are we going to be followers? When are we becoming leaders? See, people say leaders are born. I disagree. Leaders, yes, are sometimes born. Leaders are made, crafted by giving these skills and these trainings. What is what TEFTA is doing, NEFTA is doing amazing work. So where are the basic ingredients? You will teach in your universities, you will teach in your training centers how to become a good slave. And when I say you means in general, I'm talking about. When I say good slave mindset, that yes, you have to go out and do a job. Yes, find a job, government job, private job. And I've seen people who leave government, private jobs with good pay scales only to join a very confirming kind of a government job and then sit there and waste their brainy minds. Now, this is all being taught, inculcated. Our education system today. I was part of the SNC, the Single National Curriculum, extended committee discussion. After 4 months, amazing syllabus they have developed from grade, from the grade grassroots level. I tell you, they have touched each and every life skill. And when I asked this question to them, how are you going to inculcate these life skills? When are you going to teach? They said, it will be a class specifically in every section, every quarter, every quarter when before the exam happens, there will be a class taking place. And in that class, we will be teaching them these skills. I'm sorry, these skills are not learned like that for a nursery kid. He's not going to sit in a class and listen to you tell me, okay, close your eyes, go into your mind. It doesn't work like that. So these skills need to be lived, need to be inculcated from day one. Punjab, I saw in the budget, 13.8 to 23.8 is what they have allocated for education, which is very good for building infrastructure, as Dr. Vaqar very rightly mentioned. Again, I am in favor of infrastructure. I am a sportsman myself, played every sport. I was captain of my university basketball team, captain of my university athletics team, played in hockey, football, cricket, all the sports that I could play. I've studied, I was blessed, one of the few blessed who studied in Cadet College in Islamabad. So there also I was able to participate in every single sport and yet score good marks. I work with Pakistan women cricket team. I'm working with a few Pakistani cricketers. I'll tell you, it's not the talent that is lacking. It's the mindset that is lacking. And even for sportsmen, you can build sports arenas, you can build stadiums. How are you going to inculcate that sports mindset? That is very, very important. And that is something which is missing into not only, and this is the reason why I mentioned earlier that in today's budgets that we give, we are making budgets for those. I work with a lot of youth, and I have worked with a lot of startups. One of my startups is now, has gone global now. The one I was working, I was mentoring that startup. And mashallah, during pandemic, during when COVID had started, everybody was down and this startup was going up like that. The only thing I saw and I gave to that CEO of that startup was mental strengthening. I saw that the guy has a direction. I saw that the person has the ability to bounce back. So all I gave him was that mental direction. If you ask him ever, he'll tell you that his mental strength and his learning of skills, which is handling of humans. We are all dealing with human beings. We're talking about human capital. We are talking about human assets. And people ask me, well, why should I learn these techniques? I know how to talk. I know how to walk. Unfortunately, these are the skills that we lack. Had we known that, we would have been at a different level. So my whole focus And the reason why I did not indulge in or discuss anything about the budget or something, my all focus is about software development, not the hardware. Hardware you are all taking care of. Develop these softwares that as Dr. Vaqar mentioned. Yeah, I'll give you an example of one of my students. She was a 27-year-old mother. Her husband was living abroad. She came to me about a year and a half ago, dejected, disgusted with herself, wanted to commit, literally take her life. That's what she said to me. I wanted to die. I want to die. These were the words she said to me. And now, after 1.5 years of only developing her mental skills, she is now an inspiration to many. She is there on the Facebook, she's there on the YouTube, she's changing people's lives day in, day out by changing her own life because she understood the skill of dealing with humans. We need to first learn the skill of dealing with ourselves. Sama, when you mentioned that how did I, enter into this thing? So I entered into this field to understand myself, how I can improve my relation with my children, my family, and myself. I have invested over even last month. I did a degree training with Tony Robbins, one of the biggest names in US. Spent about 1,500 US dollars in learning. Learning is something we do not spend. Education we do spend, but we don't spend on learning. Knowledge is different than education. That's what I believe. I have spent over $50,000 in the last 10 years in gaining my learning. And people say, oh, you might be having that much money. Trust me, I don't have the money. I have the will. Money comes. The reason I'm mentioning is that all these stories is that please, let's focus on developing the software. Let's focus on developing the mindset. Because I always say one thing: attitude is altitude. If we do not have the right attitude, we will never be able to achieve the altitude that we are looking for. So if you want to achieve that altitude, bring brick and mortar, brick and water things, do them as much as you can. Develop that winning attitude, that success attitude. We in Pakistan are very, very blessed. I'll tell you how. I started working on a book called Quran, Mind Sciences, and Sunnah. So I thought after studying mind sciences, I went to US, studied with Richard Bender for NLP. I went to Spain, studied from Center of Body Language for my body language training. I did all these training from wherever I could, because knowledge is not something that we should gain from anybody. After learning all these skills, I decided I need to learn to see what Sunnah tells me and what Quran tells me. And you'll be amazed. I was surprised and amazed myself that what I have learned there, more than that is already available. It's just that I had never spent time understanding, because nobody presented me knowledge in this form ever. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. Then if nobody has done it, what can I do? And I did the same thing which I did for the job seekers 21 years ago. I started teaching these skills myself, my children, my friends, people around me. So the first thing, in LLP we say something, and I would like to conclude two words by going that side, is that there's an NLP success formula in life. We should know our outcome. For example, if I want to go to Peshawar and I am not sure if I have to go to Peshawar or not, I'll always be confused if I have to go to Peshawar or I have not to go to Peshawar. But if I know I have to go to Peshawar, my outcome is very clear. So no matter what budget, what training you provide, what education you give, what should be your outcome? If your outcome is to get A's, B's, or 3.9 GPAs, then that's what you're gonna get. Outcome should be the other way around. This is a byproduct. That's according to me. So once your outcome is known, the second thing is I want to go to Peshawar, but I cannot go to Peshawar. Do you know why? Because I did not take an action. Second is action. Okay, action. I must buy a ticket. I knew my outcome. I bought a ticket, but I did not reach Peshawar because I bought a ticket to Karachi, which means that I did an action, but my action was not in the right direction. So I could not reach Peshawar. Now I need to be flexible enough to go back, return that ticket and buy another ticket and go to Peshawar. And while doing all these things, when I do mistakes, if I droop my shoulders, I will be producing negative hormones inside my own body and I'll be down. So I should do that with an excellence, approach of excellence with my shoulders up. Yes, what happened? What if I do a mistake? I can learn it. I can do better next time. I will be better next time. I am better next time. So with this, I don't want to take a long time because I know we have already lost. I don't know if I can. I have a few points, but if I don't, then I will. Dr. Simon can let me know that. If, otherwise, I'll conclude with a few objectives that I have in my hand.
Yes, yes, please, Ali. You may go ahead.
Okay.
You can continue.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simon. Thank you very much. Today where I feel is the biggest issue that is happening. Every stakeholder is for himself. I remember a story. I'll tell you a story of how my name to fame is 5 of my employees who are 10 times more richer than I am today, and I even help them in giving them seed capital. Our youth today does not only need education, does not only need, because I'm working with a lot of youth. I'm working with them on different levels. They need direction. They need objective oriented goals. That's where they are missing. They go to these incubation centers, they go to these training centers, they come out, they learn a skill. I would not say they learn a skill. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that word. They learn a technique. We are teaching techniques in all these trainings, but they do not learn a skill, how to use that technique. It's a huge difference between learning a technique and a skill. In NLP, we say NLP is 80% skills and 20% techniques. So we learn skills to use a technique. I can drive a car, I can learn how to swim by reading a manual. Okay, but to really swim, I have to dive inside a pool, right? So that's where one thing is missing. When I was working with these 5 employees of mine, who I don't call employees actually anymore, but I always call them team players, my team members. I realized that I gave them seed capital, they were not able to perform. That's where I understood they need mentors. I gave them my mentorship and I helped them getting more mentors in different areas. For finance was always my weakest point. So I told them, don't ask financial advice from me, go to a financial advisor. So I helped them in getting those mentors. Today, even if we are doing mentorship, by the way, I have a mentor even at this age today. I pay him every month. We think mentorship is something that somebody is supposed to give us anyways, and we don't even thank for his time, forget about money. I pay my mentor every month, even if I don't use his services, because I value it. And why I value my mentor? Because I value myself. So, so the second point is that our academia today thinks, and I'm using the word thinks, having taught in a few universities, I'll tell you that for teaching, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a PhD degree holder, only then you can teach. Yes, that adds up a lot of value in terms of your academic experience. But trust me, industry experience is much more, or not much more, or equally valid. Somebody asked a stone, how did you get round? The stone said by, getting the kicks of people from the University of Hard Knocks. So our academia, our industry thinks they know more. Academia thinks they know more, and they both think we are doing industry academia partnership, and we come out with soft skills to what they call soft skill trainings as just a gesture of score ticking again, scoring that okay, we have done communication skills, we have done presentation skills, we have done negotiation skills without any follow-ups, without any plan in the mind. The plan I'm working with a lot of banks. One of the banks called me and said, we have done communication skills with so many trainers, but we have not achieved one single goal, which we had in our minds. Said, yes, you will never be able to because you do not have an objective in your mind. You do not have a follow-up plan in your mind. And their youth, because they were hiring young people who are coming fresh from big schools, and they thought that we are the best ones, so we don't need them. So today I believe it's a trica that needs to be sitting together. The academia, excellent. The industry experts, amazing. And people who are into the field of mind sciences, who are in the field of skills. Mind sciences should be introduced as a subject from grade nursery to the nth degree. So people, everybody tells us what to talk. Everybody tells us, think before you speak. But nobody tells us how to speak. Because 93% of your communication is non-verbal and 7% is words. We learn a lot of words, but how to communicate without the words, we don't know. So this is something which I believe, because I'm working with a lot of industry, and I'm working with a lot of different industries, IT, telecom, IT, banking, and I see that people who are coming there, they are lacking these skills. Nobody has taught them.
Yes, please. If you could sum up within last. Then
I am summing it up. So my sum up, point is that today we need to sit down together. Government needs to take advice, I believe, and work with these stakeholders where academia, industry, mind sciences experts, and government should draft a true objective. And when that objective is drafted, then we draft our budgets according to that objective. Not the other way around, that we put a budget and then we think what do we have to do. Our objective of education should be clear, and I believe the biggest emphasis should be on understanding this machinery which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, called human being, our human mind. And the last point I would make is, as I mentioned earlier, we are producing followers right, left, and center, and we are giving budgets to increase our followers. Let's focus on how to produce leaders. So this is my biggest question, that how long we will keep comparing ourselves to others and be part of the rat race. What stops us from defining our own direction and be our own leaders and produce our own leaders? So all our budgets, and thank you very much for this, my last word is that all our budgets, all our efforts, I believe, should be aimed towards inculcating those skills that can produce tomorrow's leaders for us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali, for sharing your extraordinary experience. In the end, I would like to open house for questions from the audience. If they have any question, they can ask from our panelists. Participants, if you have any questions. I think the discussion has been so clear that there is no point which needs more clarification. And I agree with you, Mr. Ali, that it's the change in mental models which is required at present time. And this is the idea even given by a development economist, Marita Sen, that ideas matter, ideology matters. And this is something which is to be focused through the industry academia linkages. By developing such kind of linkages, we can move forward for developing a better strategy to make youth a part of both budgeting process and the outcome of this process, that how they are going to get the benefits out of those initiatives which are being advised by this part of the society. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaqar, for briefing us on on that part of budget, which is focusing on youth. Thank you, Ms. Sana, for giving us knowledge about the opportunities the partners have for us, for our youth, to be in or to be involved in entrepreneur activities or in kind of soft learning the soft skills and soft lawns sort of activities. Thank you, Mr. Ali, for joining us and sparing your time for giving us the insightful ideas about your experience, that how a person, even getting a formal education, be a part of the society informally, engaging himself or herself into entrepreneurial activities, which is no doubt a very healthy activity for the society at present times, because as the Sana has mentioned, only 10% are able to get the public jobs and 90% are going to be absorbed by private sector. And if you are not able to get even any sort of job, then this is the best way to be a part of the economic activity of any society. And the government is focusing on this site as well. And I think many such loans have been introduced in the past and in the recent budget, that these can be utilized for this purpose, that you can be a part of this community, entrepreneurial community. There can be a shift to absorb this youth bulge in this way. Let me see if we have any question. I think, Sharon, there is no question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think, Dr. Sabha, there was a question in the chat with regards to how much is, for example, given to defense vis-a-vis education. So just to clarify a bit, the defense budget in the last 3 years, unfortunately, could not grow in real terms. One, and second, of course, if you look at defense budget as percentage of GDP, we are far behind even the regional countries whom we could compare in the per capita income range. So I think while yes, about a decade or two back, this was an argument which was valid, that yes, defense budgets were prioritized due to reasons, of course, related to law and order, war on terror. But not anymore. In fact, all three chiefs of armed forces voluntarily did not increase the defense budget last year due to COVID-19, locust attack, and other challenges which were facing the Federation. So I think that confusion needs to be cleared. And if you compare Pakistan's federal budget or defense budget as percentage to GDP, we are not in the list of even top 20, top 25 countries investing in their defense. In fact, we are barely investing in the maintenance expenditure of our defense equipment. No new equipment is being bought through our own budget unless there is military support that may be given from friendly countries. Our budget has the least space to buy capital equipment for our armed forces. So just wanted to clarify that because I saw that question in the chat.
Thank you, Dr. Vaqar. Any other question, please?
Excuse me, sir. Sir, मेरा question आपसे है, sir, every year almost provincial surplus create होता है और इस year में almost RS 570 billion का था जो federal budget के में addition हुई और उसके बाद overall deficit calculate किया जाता है. तो क्या provinces की जो है absorption capacity इतनी नहीं है क्योंकि youth बल जो हमारा बहुत ज़्यादा है तो वह सच surplus जो है every year create हो रहा है हमारा.
जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच. दिस इज़ अ वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन जी. और बिल्कुल जिस तरीके से मैंने कहा था और मेरा ख्याल है मिस सना ज़िया ने भी जो है वो इसको हाईलाइट किया कि हमारे जो प्रोजेक्ट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, प्रोग्राम इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के चैलेंजेस हैं, उनमें एक चैलेंज जो है वो ये भी है कि हम चूँकि टाइमली हमारा जो प्रोजेक्ट साइकिल है उसमें कुछ डिलेज़ आ जाते हैं, प्रोक्योरमेंट में डिलेज़ आ जाते हैं, آف کورس سارے لیگل پروسیس ہوتے ہیں جس کی وجہ سے پروجیکٹس کو ٹائم اینڈ کاسٹ اوور رنس کا سامنا ہوتا ہے، اور اس کو جو ہے اس وقت امپروو کرنے کی کوشش کی جا رہی ہے تاکہ جو ایلوکیٹڈ سمس ہیں وہ ٹائملی ایبزارب ہوں، ٹائملی اسپینڈ ہوں. اور کیسے امپروو کرنے کی کوشش کی جا رہی ہے؟ پہلا تو ہے کہ آپ نے کچھ لیگل کور امپروو کیا ہے تھرو پبلک فائنینس مینجمنٹ لاز، جو وفاق کی سطح پہ بھی اور صوبوں کی سطح پہ بھی آپ نے PFM لاز کو جو ہے امپروو کیا ہے. دوسرا، بہت سارا جو پروکیورمنٹ کا نظام جو ہے، جو مینولی ہوتا تھا، پرنٹ کے تھرو، پرنٹ میڈیا کے تھرو اناؤنسمنٹس ہوتی تھی، اب آپ ان کو آئی ٹی اور جو آئی ٹی ٹولس ہیں ان کے تھرو آن لائن لے گئے ہیں. سو اب وینڈرز کی آن لائن رجسٹریشن ہوتی ہے، وچ ہیز ناٹ اونلی امپروو ٹرانسپیرنسی بلکہ اسپیڈ بھی جو ہے وہ بڑھائی ہے. سو دس از لرننگ بائی ڈوئنگ. آف کورس گورنمنٹ میں چیزوں کی اسپیڈ وہ تو نہیں ہوتی جو ظاہر ہے محمد علی صاحب ایکسپلین کر رہے تھے کہ ظاہر جو ایک ڈیزائرڈ اسپیڈ ہونی چاہیے، جس طریقے سے ہمیں اپنے بجٹس کو مینیج کرنا چاہیے، ایفیشینٹلی اسپینڈ کرنا چاہیے. لیکن آئی تھنک وہ آہستہ آہستہ امپروومنٹ کی طرف جا رہے ہیں. اینڈ آئی تھنک آئی ٹی اور یہ جو پروکیورمنٹ ڈیش بورڈس اب لے کر آئے ہیں، ہوپ فلی دیٹ ول help address this issue as well. Ji.
Sir, one more question, sir. Sir, جتنی بھی گورنمنٹس آتی ہیں، جب نیو جیسے ہی وہ آفس میں آتی ہیں تو فرسٹ 2 years اور سم ٹائم 1 year جو ہے وہ اسٹیبلائزیشن پالیسیز اور سم ٹائمز کنٹریکشنری مانیٹری پالیسی اور فسکل پالیسیز لگاتی ہیں کہ اکانومی کو وہ اسٹیبلائز کریں. پھر ایٹ دا اینڈ کیونکہ انہوں نے الیکشن بھی ان کا فوکس ہوتا ہے، تو جو ان کے اینڈنگ ہوتے ہیں، جو لاسٹ 2 بجٹس جس طرح PTI کا ہے، پہلے 2 جو تھے ان کے اسٹیبلائزیشن بجٹ تھے، اور اب انہوں نے جو اسپینڈنگ ہے ڈیولپمنٹ سیکٹر میں بھی انکریز کیا ہے. تو اس نریٹو میں آپ کس طرح اس کو دیکھتے ہیں کہ کیا PTI کی گورنمنٹ بھی وہی نریٹو کی طرف جا رہی ہے جو پریویس گورنمنٹس گئی ہیں، یا some hope is there for betterment?
نہیں، آئی تھنک جس طرح محمد علی صاحب کہہ رہے تھے، بجٹ از سچ اے گریٹ اپرچونیٹی فار اینی گورنمنٹ، مے اٹ بی PTI اور اینی ادر، ٹو شو کہ جی ہاؤ کلوز آر وی ٹو آر مینیفیسٹو. اور میرے خیال ہے بہت ساری نئی چیزیں ہیں اس بجٹ میں جو کہ آپ نے فار ایگزامپل ماضی کی کئی گورنمنٹس میں نہیں دیکھی. فار ایگزامپل انویسٹمنٹ آن کلائمیٹ چینج، انویسٹمنٹ آن انوائرمنٹ، انویسٹمنٹ آن فوڈ سیکیورٹی. یہ وہ ایریاز ہیں جو باوجود اس کے کہ اس ملک کو انفلیشن، جاب کریشن، ڈیٹ برڈن کا سامنا ہے، لیکن بہت سارے ایسے ڈیولپمنٹ آبجیکٹیوز ہیں جو صرف لپ سروس تھی لیکن پہلی دفعہ آپ کو بجٹ میں نظر آ رہے ہیں، جس کی وجہ سے آف کورس یو آر آلسو بینگ ایکنالجڈ گلوبلی. فار ایگزامپل جو آپ کی کلائمیٹ چینج ڈرائیو ہے، وہ پرائم منسٹر بورس جانسن نے جو ہے وہ ایکنالج کی ہے آن ریکارڈ کہ جی دس از واٹ موسٹ کنٹریز ان دا ورلڈ couldn't do، جو کہ ایک فسکلی کنسٹرینڈ کنٹری جو ہے پاکستان، اس نے کیا ہے، انکلوڈنگ وہ جو 10 بلین ٹریز سونامی کے لیے، جو 10 بلین ٹریز کی پلانٹیشن کے لیے جو بجٹ لائن رکھی گئی ہے. That is, I think that's a very innovative scheme in the budget. It will let you earn a lot of carbon credit going forward. آپ qualify کریں گے for raising more green bonds in the capital market، اور آپ کی innovative financing raise ہوگی.
جی سر، تھینک یو.
I think we should wind up now the discussions by concluding that no doubt there are many initiatives taken by the government for youth in this budget as well, like the previous government have practiced. But the thing is, we need to develop industry academia linkages. We need to develop, we need to focus on this side at this time, because this is going to fill the gap what the market is offering and what our graduates are going to be with their degrees in the market. And there are many other aspects which are also being highlighted by the speakers, focusing or highlighting the importance of entrepreneurial activities, and then the startups, which we should try to learn how we can be a part of this this kind of new, it's again we can call a ray of hope for us, for the youth. They can be a part of economic activity in this way as well, if they are going to play their role, being the young entrepreneur as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaqar. Thank you, Ms. Sana and Mr. Ali, for sharing your experiences, for sharing your knowledge with us. This has been really a very wonderful experience to listen all of you on a single platform. Thanks once again from our side. And I would like also to extend my thank to Dr. Babar Aziz, without whose cooperation it won't be possible at this moment. He's also busy in some his commitment with Vice Chancellor at this time, and that's why he couldn't join us at this moment. Thank you, Dr. Vaqar. Thank you, Ms. Sana, and thank you, Ali, once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.